Batman Catwoman issue 6, Tom King writing with Clayman on the art. This, of course, it's maybe been hindered a little bit by delays because there's been some gaps between issues. And given that it's got 3 timelines moving in each issue, it is a little bit hard to keep track of. That's to say that I didn't enjoy this because there's definitely a lot of stuff to like in here, and the art is typically pretty excellent. So yeah, we have in the past, we have Joker coming over to Selina's house and decorating the Christmas tree with her.
So I just want to say the competing ideas of Joker and Christmas are nothing that I ever put in my head. Now I've seen him in a Christmas sweater and I kind of like it. Just the whole idea of Joker in a festive mood. And especially these lines I read in the Mark Hamill Joker voice. Because sometimes, depending on the Joker, I read it in the Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
When it's a little bit more dark. But here, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the Phantasm, this Joker has definitely been Mark Hamill. So, and I feel the Christmas letter doubles down on that.
I think it's because if the idea that Selina has this sort of weird friendship with him at some point, it's harder to imagine that with the Heath Ledger Joker than it is Mark Hamill. I think that's maybe partly why as well.
Could be.
But, and then obviously in the kind of middle story, you have Phantasm has Selina tied up, waiting for Batman to come rescue her. Some gorgeous art here. Phantasms look great every time they've been on screen. Or screen. Well, it's screen for me because I'm reading it on a tablet, but, on page. Particularly the 2 pages where it's like Batman standing on a fire escape and there's this like glow of light from the street hitting him. And then the reverse of that is looking up at Phantasm with the bat signal behind her. Really good stuff.
This is some of man's best art, I feel, so far in the series.
Yeah, it's glorious stuff. And then you have Selina in the future, old woman Selina with her daughter, asking if she killed the Joker. I think that was actually kind of what we cliffhangered on last time in that time period, was just her flat out asking that question. And Selina kind of dodges it and just sort of says, "Hey, you going out patrolling tonight? I'll come with you." And she's like, "Aren't you too old for that?" It's like, "Bitch, please. I'm Catwoman." So that kind of progresses that.
In between the panels on the page where they're sitting across from each other.
Sure.
The whole cat and mouse motif.
Yes.
I love that because you just see this mouse going across, and as you're reading, it's almost ping-ponging back and forth. And then on the bottom, when she says, "I'll join you," you just see the cat peer itself out. And it's just like, oh, Selina, what's your game here?
Yeah.
With your poor unsuspecting daughter.
But notably, the mouse does get away down a hole at the top of the next page. So, all the metaphor. What I was going to say is that we transition back to the flashback with Selina looking for Christmas decorations. Because she's got a tree, but no decorations on it. As Joker's shadow is very Nosferatu. I like that touch.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I got a very Nosferatu vibe. All of her ornaments are all cat themed. She sort of comments that she's a bit of a cliche of herself. But and we come back to the fight, which is not much is happening. It's just it's a debate over if Batman should kill Joker or not, because that's what Phantasm wants to do, and Phantasm kind of critiques that. That comes a little bit more later though. Commissioner Dick Grayson, of course, is in the future. So he knows who Selina is. When he turns around and Selina's standing there next to Batwoman, he's like, "Okay, hey Selina." But this is actually kind of a hard. It's actually neatly, funnily enough, because it comes out the same week as that Nightwing issue. It kind of actually ties in thematically a little bit. This conversation they have, where she says that, "Hey, you were always the kindest, and even Bruce said that, and he never liked to compare you, but so." And he says, she says Bruce would be proud of you, and so. Yeah, it's just funny that it comes out the same week as the issue of Nightwing where everyone's talking about how great Dick Grayson is.
Yeah, she talks about the family and that Dick still has his optimism through everything he's been through was Bruce's greatest triumph, and that in Bruce's darkest moments he looked to Dick as his guiding light, which I'm like, oh, and then like you just said, that partnered with Nightwing so well. Like he's the best of us. That's almost disarming to Dick here, because when she says you're a good kid and he was so proud of you, he's like, and it disarms him. So he says, "Thank you, just thank you." Like he wasn't ready for that, which I think is a nice little character beat.
Yeah, and then alternatively in the flashback, Selena's explaining to Joker how she stole her first. The first thing she ever stole was one of these cat ornaments off the tree at the orphanage. And Joker, in this horrific horror movie style panel, looks through the branches of the tree and says, "Selena, is there anything in you didn't steal?" He's like, and she's like, "Yeah," and then she sort of looks down and goes, "No."
Yeah. I will say too, I like the idea of her stealing the ornament just to put it up every year. Like that was just the whole point. Is that like she wanted her ornament to add to the tree, so she takes the cat Garfield-esque one, and she says, and every year it would come back and nobody ever really noticed. But, I just, again, character moments here.
Yeah, and Joker says he adores her. And, it's kind of funny that it's playing with the idea that Joker, because we always talk about Joker kind of being in love with Batman, and I feel like this is kind of an interesting idea that he's also somewhat infatuated with Selena, which would also explain why he's never just randomly killed her too. So you can argue that this is partly like just explaining why in comics this has never happened, but it does kind of work.
I like the idea that she's just as much of a puzzle as Batman is, and it's fun for him to try to figure out. Once he has her figured out, then that's when he can do away with it, just like with Batman. It's Heath Ledger at the end of Dark Knight was, kill you, what would I do without you? It's the same with Selena, just in almost like the opposite way. Whereas like you're so bad, but you're good. And with Batman, it's like you're so good, but there's a darkness there. And with her, you're so dark, but there's a light. And even Joker can pick up on it.
Yeah, I have to say this next scene, which is back to the Batman and Phantasm fight in the middle story, is that I actually obviously we've had this debate with Batman many times where someone says, why wouldn't you kill? Jason Todd obviously has this with them on a regular basis. There's a part of Batman's response to this that I thought was really good, and it stood out to me, where he talks about how, because she says, "Hey, in wars, would you call every soldier a murderer? It happens all the time." And Batman says, "Well, the soldiers wage war based on necessary limitations. I'm not limited, so therefore I do not kill." And then when she sort of like hits back at him and talks about you do have limitations. Like the fact that Joker keeps getting out and killing people it shows that you are limited in what you're doing. And Batman's response I thought was really good here. He says, "Aiming for an ideal and not reaching the ideal is not a failure, it is human." I thought that was a really poignant response, and something that, whenever this debate comes up and people get really cynical and say, Batman should just kill Joker, it'd be over. This is where I really like the kind of the idea of like Batman's idealism and like his staunch,
well, it's like he says, my mistakes, that's what fuels me, right? If I did everything perfectly the first time, then of course there'd be no reason to be, to keep doing this, and that's what makes me human. Because this is the anti-Bat-God argument, right? Is like the fact that yes, Batman, you can have him do everything, but if that's the point, then he's boring, and that's why I don't like the Bat-God. Here he's going like, well, no, the fact that sure, I don't just get rid of Joker, but that's not my goal. My goal is to make things better, and killing Joker doesn't make things better.
I think what I also like about it is that it coexists with Bat-God in the sense that you can still have the Bat-God who miraculously wins fights and like thinks of things and all that, but this like human side to him, the actual idea of the character is still very human and grounded. And
he learns.
Yeah, so you can sort of have them coexisting without them contradicting each other too much.
But yeah, nice. I was not expecting this to pop up in this book.
Yeah.
Like, just because of the Batman I've gotten from Tom King, kind of like, I hated the Iron Bane story because it was very Bat-God. So I've been conditioned, but here, reasoning with Phantasm, and this is what breaks her eventually, right? This is what makes her pull off the mask to reveal, Andrea underneath. So...
and this Selena hits him from behind, and this was all kind of a ruse. She was working with her because she actually agrees that she killed Joker, and we know that she shares that sentiment because we've already seen her do it in the future earlier in the story.
Much later,
I actually also really enjoyed this page below here where Helena and Catwoman are beating up some of the new villains in Gotham in the future. and Selina's basically doing the old woman thing where she's complaining about how derivative
Yep.
they all are. I particularly liked Four Face, which is a set of twins who both have Two-Face style gimmicks.
But yeah, they're twins who got acid on them, read an old book, and just went with it. Well, as much as you love Four Face, I love Dragoon, who's a goon but also a dragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Polymath, who has a
Yeah.
what's what do you call that shape for his head?
It's like a dodecahedron.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, but I just thought it was a really fun thing. It was kind of this like comparison, and the idea that the villains keep getting worse and cheesier, and Selena's kind of like cracking
It's
jokes about
Gotham,
it.
right? Like,
Yeah.
What I loved here was them sitting on the world's finest side. Like, that's just a fun little call out. But just mother and daughter sitting up there, and also the fact that Catwoman's wearing the Catwoman, like the original suit.
Yeah, it's from the 40s.
You know?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
original.
like just the idea she dusted that off to go out.
Yeah. And eventually, Helena asks her again, and did she kill the Joker? And she says, "Damn right, I did." And we actually transition back to the past back to the past, and when we see that the Joker's sort of saying goodbye and leaving, but it's all told in the reflections of the Christmas tree ornaments, and basically it's just wrapping up the conversation they've had before, which is you told Batman about the bomb, and she's like, you knew I would, and he's like, yeah, but it'd have been funnier if you hadn't. But yeah, it's this weird amicable
Psychopath.
goodbye. Yeah.
Well, and I love how it's all in the baubles,
Yeah.
right? Like just the way that it's balanced on the art page. Again, this is some of man's best work, I think, to date.
Yeah, and the final page kind of sums up kind of a lot of what this book's been about, because she shut this front door, there's a knock on it, and she sort of thinks it's the Joker again, says, "I hear you," and no, it's not going to be like, who is it? And then when she opens the door, it's Bruce. And, like, it's basically just this idea that both of these people are such a big part of her life, and her balancing that. So this is just a really sort of neat bit of symbolism early on, where she was seeing the Joker more often because she was in that crime world, but obviously this relationship with Bruce was just starting to like heat up, just starting to go somewhere more serious. It just that balancing between them, and the final panel of just the laughter, the idea that even when she's like having this, what presumably is a nice moment of Bruce showing up at her door, feeling the relief that it's him, it's kind of marred because in the back of her head, this guilt over her association with the Joker, and just him being in her head. So she's hearing this laughter in her head, the ha ha ha.
She's been incepted.
Yeah.
So
it's a neat
I also
touch.
like the please don't say it was to, and then when she sees Bruce, she says, "Kill me," and like I just that pacing, I can hear that in a voice like, kill me. Why you big beautiful man?
Yeah, and that's the to be continued. Really solid. I mean, honestly, the weird thing about this book is that it's just not as good as Rorschach or Strange Adventures. So it feels like third place out of those three. Obviously, Supergirl is now in the mix as well, which is weird because now we have that to compare it to as well. But because those two were already running, and because this is so far along, that's the two that we're comparing it to, and it is definitely the weakest one, but it's still really solid and still enjoyable to read every time I read it. And the art's gorgeous.
I might put it over Supergirl for enjoyment, just because.
I wasn't compared to Supergirl yet.
Gotcha.
I was just firmly talking about the other two.
Gotcha. Well, when you said the other three, I did the math and I forgot Strange Adventures is still going on.
Yes. But no, really, really solid. I mean, again, it's more of a Catwoman book than it is a Batman book. I know it's called Batman Catwoman, but it's one of those things where it's just like, it'll sell more copies if you.
Well, yeah, so my comic book owner, the shop owner, I'm the comic book owner, but the shop owner of my shop was asking me about, what's it about and if it's worth a read. And I go, it's weirdly Selina's Christmas Carol. Like you have the past, present, and future, all the different ghosts and what this means and how it affects her relationship with Bruce and stuff. And I go, it's really worth a read. Like once it's all done, I told him, give it a read. I think you'll enjoy it.
I think it'll read even better in trade because I think the gaps, because of the three different timelines, it's having to remember three timelines constantly is a little bit of a juggling act. But obviously reading it all the way through once you can will probably tidy that up quite nicely. But what are you giving issue 6 of Batman Catwoman?
I'm gonna give this an 8, and mostly on the man's art. I really felt dropped, or like not drug it up, but propped it up a little bit more than normal. So yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8.
Yeah, I think I'm tempted to, because I think the art's fantastic. I was not expecting the great take on the Batman. Why does Batman not kill? Why does he stick to his ideals? Speech. I thought that was surprisingly pretty great. And there's some fun stuff. But yeah, I'm sorry, I just agree with the 8. For whatever reason, I'm not feeling like going to the 8.5 on this issue.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because the standard is so absurdly high right now that this just feels not as impressive as it otherwise would.